Thinking about launching a podcast but overwhelmed by all the moving parts? At Turnkey Podcast Productions, we take the hassle out of podcasting so you can focus on the talk, not the tech. From concept to launch, guest booking to post-production, we handle everything. Need a strategy to grow your show and turn guests into clients? Yep, we do that too. DIY or done for you, we've got the solution that fits. Whether you're just getting started or ready to scale, Turnkey is your behind-the-scenes podcast team. Turnkey Podcast Productions. Your voice, your message, fully produced. Learn more at turnkeypodcast.com/contact. That's turnkeypodcast.com/contact.
Here's what's next on the Nice Guys on Business.
I wanted to be able to solve why are we having performance issues, meaning, low productivity and low return on our investments. And I had this hypothesis that what might be missing is curiosity. So I set out I commissioned a group of researchers to answer this question. It was a single question, which is, what is the relatedness between leadership, performance, and curiosity? And it took them 3 months deep diving into research, doing our own primary research. And they came back and said, there is a direct correlation between leadership performance and curiosity.
The Nice Guys on Business podcast. They had me at hello. Go from where you are now to where you could be. Get expert tips to grow your business, to be more productive and more efficient, whether you're trying to build influence, grow your community, or make it rain. Best-selling author of Nice Guys Finish First, Doug Sandler, can lead the way. The Nice Guys on Business is produced by Turnkey Podcast Productions. Now, here's your host, Doug Sandler.
All right, Nice Guy community. Today's guest is a powerhouse of purpose and curiosity, Dr. Debra Clary, also known as Dr. Deb. She spent her career shaping leaders and transforming organizations from the inside out, bringing her expertise from powerhouse brands like Frito-Lay, Coca-Cola, Jack Daniels, Humana, just some of those small ones. With a doctorate in leadership and organizational development, Dr. Deb knows how to turn strategy into success and build cultures where curiosity drives results. Get ready for an energetic, insightful conversation about leadership, alignment, and what it really takes to elevate your impact. Dr. Deb, I'm excited to have you here. Welcome to the Nice Guys on Business podcast.
All right. Thank you, Doug. I'm glad to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. Let's start with the curiosity thing. What got you curious about curiosity?
So my background, as you had shared, is I spent over 3 decades in corporate America, and I began to notice that leaders were solving the wrong problems. They were trying to fix performance problems when I had this hypothesis that maybe what's missing is fueling curiosity. And one day, sitting next to my CEO, he asked me a question that really changed the trajectory of where I was going to go next. And that was, can curiosity be learned, or is it innate? And I went out, looked at some articles, did some research, came back and said, guess what? Good news. Curiosity can be learned. And that's what started me on this journey.
What I love about that, and what is most challenging for those in maybe some older generations before your and my generation were there, I remember it was like, just watch and learn. Just watch and learn. Don't ask questions. It was like when I was in my dad's building business, my stepdad's building business in the early 90s. And I recall him saying to me one day, why do you ask so many questions? And I thought, well, why would you want to, in my brain, he was my boss. So it's like, even though he was my stepdad, at the same time, he was my boss. And I felt really uncomfortable with him saying that, only because I'm like, how else do you learn if not by asking questions and being curious? Apparently that it was a whole mode of study for you, because it just seems like, why wouldn't people always want to be asked questions? It's like, am I bothering you by asking questions and wanting to learn? Why is that? Why was that such an old school thing where you had to be silent and just kind of peer over somebody's shoulder to learn?
The problem is, Doug, it's present in today. That organizations are still facing that in terms of, if you look at engagement scores, they're extremely low. In the history of Gallup, citing these numbers. It's the lowest we've ever seen in corporations.
Wow.
And when we asked a group of millennials, what is your source of disengagement? Why are you unhappy? And they say, my leader doesn't know me and doesn't care to know me. And we are discouraged from asking questions. So just like you had with your stepfather, it's the same as is now. And the thing about it is that we are born naturally curious.
Yeah.
As children, we ask 298 questions a day. If you've ever had a toddler, you've ever been around a toddler, why is the sky blue? Are all cats girls? I mean, on and on and on. But by we become adults, we ask about 5 questions a day. And those 5 questions are
Huh.
maybe something like, did you make dinner reservations or are we eating at home? That
Mm.
we've learned to become incurious. So, as children, we're taught to be incurious. Then we go on to the university, we get a degree, we become an accountant or lawyer, we go into the workplace, and we have this expertise, and we're rewarded for that expertise. And
Mm.
oh, by the way, we're all under significant amount of time constraints. And so that's when an employee comes in with a problem and we say, just go do this.
I think that, and maybe I'm wrong here, or maybe I'm talking to the right audience by stating this, but I really feel like curiosity is the mother of innovation. I mean, how can you not be how can you be an innovator without being curious, without asking questions about how do I push this limit, or how can I push to the next degree? And I find that the organizations that have the happiest and the best cultures, aren't they the ones that have an environment that's free and safe for asking questions?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what in our research we found that curiosity can be learned and curiosity is contagious. So if I work with a leader that has a high level of curiosity, my curiosity rises.
Yeah.
And if I work with a leader that has low curiosity, I begin to drift to my own curiosity. And at the root of innovation is curiosity, and at the root of curiosity is asking a question.
I think about, the skill set that I've learned over the last 10 plus years as a podcast interviewer and 16 or almost 1700 episodes of my show. Without asking questions, this whole process shuts down.
It'd
It
be
all shuts
very
down.
boring.
Yeah, if I just say, "Tell me about yourself," go, and then just give you a platform. I actually had another podcast called the SEDx podcast, where it would almost be like a TEDx stage, where I would ask the first question, and then somebody would then share it got the lowest ratings of all of my podcasts because there was no interaction, there was no exchange. I find that you find a lot of information about a person by the questions that they ask. And why wouldn't a leader want to? I know I'm probably just speaking, preaching to the choir here, but a leader that is stifling questions is a leader that doesn't want to know anything about the people that work for him, because that's where you detect all your information. You can become a great sleuth through asking questions.
Absolutely. There's absolutely.
So,
I'm there with you.
so tell me about the makeup of the book. What was your purpose for writing it, and some of the goals that you had when you approached the first pen on paper there? Do they do that anymore? Is it pen on paper? I don't think it's pen on paper anymore.
I still like to sketch and write my outlines by hand, but yeah, mostly by keys and fingers on keys. But having spent so many years in corporate America and working in complex systems and trying to figure out how to navigate complex systems and trying to figure out is how do we create a culture where everyone thrives, and that's just not where we are right now, in at least in North America. We're just not there.
Right.
And so I set out to try to understand is how can we solve this problem? And the problem being people not feeling like they belong, they don't feel that they're connected, they don't feel like anyone cares about them. And
Wow.
all of that sounds like, oh, those are really soft things. No, they're not, because all of
No.
those are a direct correlation to performance. And I wanted to be able to solve why are we having performance issues, meaning, low productivity and low return on our investments. And I had this hypothesis that what might be missing is curiosity.
Mm.
So I set out I commissioned a group of researchers to answer this question. It was a single question, which is, what is the relatedness between leadership performance and curiosity. And it took them 3 months deep diving into research, doing our own primary research. And they came back and said, there is a direct correlation between leadership performance and curiosity.
I mean, I may just be a simple guy, but I would say there's 100% a correlation between those things. And how could there not? How could it, I know there's nothing scientific about the gut feeling of that, but there's got to be a huge relationship between curiosity and success and innovation and proper leadership within an organization. It's no longer that the leaders can lead from their ivory tower, although I guess some leaders are still believing that they can lead that way. You know, they collect their $100 million, $200 million CEO check, and they're not really in touch with the customer facing front line that's making $25 an hour.
Yeah. And I choose to look at it that they just have become incurious and they don't know better. You know, we live in a world where we are taught to be incurious. And the work that I get to do now is working with executive teams to help them say, guess what? It's not your fault.
Right.
And now let's rewind and let's talk about a framework where we can create a culture of curiosity. And the reason we want to do this is because it drives performance. And when they begin to see my data, that's when they get interested in saying, I think we need that.
Well, it's interesting that technology is probably a double-edged sword. In one case, we are such a tech-driven society that we could work remotely in our silos all by ourselves from our house and talk to a computer and have somebody on the other side. On the other side of it, you have something like AI, and you can type into ChatGPT basically any question that you want the answer to. So technology, double-edged sword. Do you think it's to our advantage or to our disadvantage in today's world?
I think it's to our advantage if we have an awareness of how we're behaving with one another. So at the root of AI is curiosity, and at the
Right.
root of curiosity are questions. But it's one, where you and I have had this advantage, at least I'm going to put you in the same category, is that I had the opportunity for many years to be with coworkers day in and day out,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I know how on a computer, how to build a relationship. I know how to ask questions. I know how to push when things are in misalignment because I had that practice in
Right.
person.
Right.
And I
Right.
think that this generation that knows no different, then there's the opportunity to share with them is how do you have breakthroughs in relationships through a screen?
What's the workplace of tomorrow look like in your best case scenario?
I would think that I'm hoping that there is a blended type of work environment where you have opportunities to meet with colleagues, whether that be at a coffee shop or if you actually go into the office on Tuesday and Wednesday,
Right.
where you need human interaction. There's only, to me, there's only so much you can
Yeah.
do, build and connect with one another as it relates to through the screen. Part of my practice is I do executive coaching, and I try really hard to meet them in person, at least in the beginning. It's because then I can really read their body language. I can kind of sense where some of their issues might be and the things that they really want to work on. And just being in communion with one another over a cup of coffee,
Hmm.
for me, really helps me as I go into coaching these individuals.
Let's put you in the position, you are a doctor, but let's put you in the position of being a medical doctor for a moment, and you are seeing this symptom as a result of an organization contacting you. What tends to be the symptom that leads to the diagnosis, which can then lead to the solution or the cure to their problem?
So in what situation? Like,
So an organization will call you and say, "This is the problem that we're experiencing. What is typically the problem they are experiencing that you are brought in to solve?" Sorry, I back my way into an analogy of a doctor, and I confused the scenario.
all good. So the number one thing that I've experienced over the last 2 years working with executive teams all over the world, I've been in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and what I have found is it comes down to one thing, and that's alignment.
Mm,
May I say misalignment,
yeah, yeah,
right? And it's so the work that I do is getting them on the same page and understanding very particularly what is it that the organization is trying to do. So
But let me just interject here for one quick second. I didn't mean to interrupt your thought, but I'm thinking that they are they. I'm not saying a leader of an organization isn't intelligent. They need to be highly intelligent in order to lead the organization. But are they typically don't notice misalignment? What typically I think they're probably noticing, correct me if I'm wrong here, is a downturn in sales, a loss of revenue, staffing issues. Is that what they're typically finding, or are they coming to you and saying we have a misalignment? Are they mature enough to see misalignment?
no,
Or
no, they do come and say, our margins have slowed, sales have slowed,
got it?
low retention, high turnover,
Yeah,
those things, and then they get together, and as a team, we begin to say, "Wh- what are the purpose and values of this group?"
right,
And we don't address alignment head on, but
right.
by doing team commitments and talking about what does a high performing team do, how does the team hold each other accountable, it naturally begins to come up and say, oh, if we're not in lockstep, the rest of the organization is going to follow that lead.
Do you find that when you are doing your consulting or when you're within an organization, are you dealing with leadership first, or are you dealing with frontline first? Where is your best place to start within to try to die? Because what they come to you with the problem is probably sometimes not really what the problem is. You probably have to go in and diagnose the problem. So where do you typically start to determine what the problem is?
Always at the top, because a CEO and an executive team have three things to do. They need to set direction, they need to set culture, and they need to set the pace. So when we rally around those three things, we begin to see where are the cracks.
Okay.
So leadership and culture are synonymous, right? So if I start in the middle or if I start at the front line, it can potentially just die out
Right.
because the executive team aren't in alignment.
I'm assuming most of the time that that leadership is reaching out, or someone that leadership is brought in to reach out to find a group like, or a company or a person like you. They want to find the solution. They're not looking to just try to figure out how do I check this box off the list. They're looking to find the solution because they know it's in there somewhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're willing to dig in and go deep. And, if you work with them for a couple of days, you begin to build up this relationship, you build up this psychological safety so that you can have those conversations. When I work with executive teams, I interview all of them in advance. So
Hmm.
one, we built a relationship, and I also have from their perspective, what do they think is happening in the organization that
Yeah.
has led to things not working out.
It's got to be exciting because there's, to a degree, there is a puzzle that needs to be figured out. The initial consult, and then the query through the curiosity through the executive team oftentimes will give you a certain bit of information, but until you really dig in, you don't know really what the problem is. You think you might know what the problem is, but you don't know until you start digging into the entire team.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example. I just did an executive team of 10 people. I interviewed each of them individually, and I saw this pattern occurring in that they would say the CEO needs to hold us accountable. Now, to me, that's a very peculiar statement. I've never said to my boss, you need to hold me accountable.
Right,
I mean,
right,
I just hold myself accountable.
right.
But as I got into it, what they were really saying is, I mean, I'm accountable, but my colleague, no, they're not accountable. So it was this thing of this, they felt that there was not a fair distribution of work.
Mm,
Well, the reality is in the executive team, there's not an even distribution of work,
right.
right? And so it was being able to have that conversation, especially as someone from an outsider, I can say that, I hear my observations, and then you can get underneath it.
Typically, when you go into an organization, is there a certain time frame that you are having to work within to discover these the problems and the solutions, or is it this is going to take, I think this is going to take 6 months, or I think this is going to take 3 months, and then at the end of 3 months you work your way into either a longer contract, or you're done early. What's that look like?
It's always an emergency.
Always, of course.
and it's, we need you in 2 weeks, or we need you in 4 weeks. And and I know I can't be successful unless I've had deep conversations with each of the executive team members. So it's one of digging in, spending, hours with these teams. And then what I do is I aggregate all of the what I heard, and then I, have a form that says, these are the 10 questions I asked. This is their aggregated information. Now let's get underneath why we think that there are these misalignments.
I'm curious, how much of it is found out in the at the boardroom, and how much of it is found out when you're just casually having lunch with someone or a cup of coffee and getting information from them, not realizing that you're even collecting information, but just finding out about them as a person.
Yeah, so for me, everything starts with, tell me about you.
Yeah.
Right. And as humans, we naturally go to, well, I've been with the company for 5 years, and I do, and then, like, well, tell me about your background. Well, I work here, and I go, no, like, your life, like, like, tell me, because we're not used to that. And the only
Right.
way that you and I can build a relationship, if you know about me as a human, and then you know me as a professional. And of course, you can't go deep unless you've built trust with somebody. An initial conversation, I'm not building trust, right? This all takes time. But when we get all together in a room and they're all committed, because I asked them on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest, how motivated are you to create a high performing team? Oh,
Yeah.
I'm 5. Like, I'm 5. And so, all right, when we get there, we're all at a 5, and we're going to get underneath this.
That's great. Well, that certainly is a level of accountability right there. If you got, 4 5s and you have somebody that's a 3, obviously that's not the right person to be sitting on the bus. And so we got to figure out how to either get that person to a 5, or how to get that person in another position within the organization or outside of the organization as well. That's got to be
Yeah.
a challenging part of the conversation, too. My dad used to call it, my dad was a sales trainer, and he used to call it, there's a difference between who you are versus who you I, your role versus your identity. And I
Mhm.
completely agree with that. You find out so much about a person by learning a little bit more about their identity, what it is that makes them tick, a little bit about their upbringing, where they've come from, their journey. Some of it has nothing to do with their role and everything to do with who they are as a person.
It's almost like they are entangled.
I completely agree. It's hard to separate the two. I know one of the things that we talked about before I hit record, and I didn't realize this until we chatted a little bit more, is not only do you have the book out there, but you're also available to go into organizations and speak on a keynote level. What does that look like when an organization brings you in and has you talk to their team?
Yeah, so typically if I'm coming in to speak of 100 or 1,000, they're wanting me to be inspirational and motivational and really talk about the power of curiosity to transform. And they walk away with the understanding why they've become incurious, and then there's hope for them to be curious. I also have an assessment, a curiosity assessment, that I encourage everyone to take, so you can understand your current level of curiosity. And since curiosity can be learned and improved, the assessment helps us with the current state.
Nice, nice. And is that available on your website, or is that something that only somebody that would hire you can take?
Yes, I do have a version on my website, but when it becomes most powerful is when you take the assessment as a team. And so now you're getting to understand, how do my teammates look at curiosity, and how are we as a total team, if you will. And that's where the real power comes in terms of transformation.
Got it. Got it. Okay, great. So you can go to Dr. Deb's website. I'll make sure I put a link in the show notes so that you have access to that. But if you're a leader of an organization and you're curious about what Dr. Deb can do, best thing to do is jump on a quick call with her. No obligation to obviously bring Dr. Deb into your organization, but just find out if you have what it takes in order to get Dr. Deb to come into your organization to talk to your team. Also, don't forget the Curiosity Curve. We want to make sure you get a copy of that as well. Get a link in the show notes. It'll take you right over to Amazon, so you can buy a copy of that. When does the book come out, or when did it come out? I know this is airing, I believe, in October or November of 2025. So when did the book come out?
It was released last week by Fast Company Press.
Oh my gosh, this is very exciting. So as of the recording of this, which is October 14th, the book came out about a week ago. So congratulations, Dr. Deb. That's got to be
Thank
very,
you.
very exciting. You're looking forward to getting a lot of comments and understand what people are asking when they're buying your book. So that's very cool.
Thank you.
Dr. Deb, what should I be asking you that I have not yet hit upon, so that your message gets full impact with my audience? They are ready to hear more. If you have more, or we can just basically give them all the information to go to the website. So what can we tell them that we haven't told them?
I would just say that curiosity is a strategic advantage. Most people see it as a soft skill. It's a nice to have. And our data shows that that's not true. It is actually a strategic advantage and will really help you extend your competitive lead. So if you're looking to grow as an individual, you're looking to grow your organization, I encourage you to look into, how do I become more curious?
No doubt, and that's probably why I'm 6'4", is because if curiosity leads to a larger team member, then I am definitely I'm filled with the answers to the questions. Dr. Deb, thanks for sharing, thanks for being on the show today, and thanks for writing the book.
Thank you.
Hey, Nice Guy community, never underestimate the power of nice. Again, special thanks to Dr. Deb Clary. All of her information, including access to her book and her website, will be right there in the show notes. Steve O'Brien, go ahead and take us out of here.
For the Nice Guys on Business, I'm Steve O'Brien. Don't underestimate the power of nice.